Can a man's slow movements justify a violent police takedown? Today, we're diving into the shocking case of Lenny Brooks, a 62-year-old grandfather and church deacon whose life was turned upside down during a routine traffic stop. This isn't just a story about a ticket. It's a story about how a physical limitation was mistaken for defiance, and how justice fought back against a dangerous bias. It was a quiet afternoon on a suburban street. Mr. Leonard Brooks, or Lenny as his friends call him, was driving home. He'd recently had a knee replacement and was still getting used to moving carefully. Suddenly, flashing lights appeared in his rearview mirror. He calmly pulled over, wondering what he'd done. It turned out his license plate tags were just 2 days expired. A simple, honest mistake. A young officer, Tyler Jensen, approached his window and asked for his license and registration. Lenny, being meticulous by nature, reached into his jacket pocket. To steady himself because of his new knee, he placed his left hand on the steering wheel and used his right hand to slowly pull out his wallet. It was a deliberate, careful movement, the kind anyone recovering from major surgery would make. But Officer Jensen didn't see a man being careful. He saw a delay. His voice crackled with tension. "Hurry up. Keep your hands where I can see them. Stop moving so slow." Lenny tried to explain, his voice calm despite his growing nervousness. "I have a bad knee, officer. I'm trying to be careful." He finally got his documents out and held them up for the officer to see. But Jensen wasn't listening. He had already decided that Lenny's slowness was an act of defiance. "You failed to comply with my order to produce those documents promptly. You were hedging," he yelled. Before Lenny could even process what was happening, his car door was flung open. What happened next is the definition of unnecessary escalation. Without another word, Officer Jensen grabbed Lenny by his arm and violently yanked him out of the car. The force wrenched Lenny's shoulder. He was slammed against the doorframe, and then Jensen swept his legs out from under him. With his bad knee, Lenny had no way to brace himself. He crashed hard onto his left side, crying out in pain as he hit the pavement. As the retired mechanic lay on the ground, Jensen pressed a knee into his back and cuffed his hands tightly behind him. Then, into his radio mic. The officer broadcast a narrative that was pure fiction. "You resisted a lawful order and assaulted an officer when I tried to remove you from the vehicle." Lenny Brooks, a grandfather and deacon, was arrested and charged with resisting arrest and disorderly conduct. He was taken away in a police car, his shoulder severely strained, his body bruised, and the knee he had just had replaced throbbing in agony. This is where the story could have ended, with one man's word against an officer's. But Lenny's attorney saw this for what it was. A classic case of contempt of cop, where an officer punishes someone not for a crime, but for a perceived lack of immediate, absolute obedience. The defense strategy was brilliant. They didn't just rely on the dash cam, which only caught part of the incident. They went deeper, using science and data to expose the officer's lie. First, they brought in a medical expert. The doctor's testimony was crucial. He explained to the jury that the specific injuries Lenny sustained, the strained shoulder, the re-aggravated knee injury, were perfectly consistent with a person being suddenly and violently pulled and thrown to the ground without any chance to brace themselves. They were completely inconsistent with the movements of someone actively struggling or resisting an officer. The medical evidence told the real story. Lenny wasn't fighting back. He was a victim of a surprise attack. Next, the attorney focused on the body cam audio. They isolated the exact moment Jensen pulled Lenny from the car. The recording was crystal clear. You could hear Lenny cry out, "My knee, please. I didn't do anything." These were not the words of a man resisting arrest. They were the desperate pleas of someone in pain, confused about why they were being attacked. This audio directly contradicted the officer's claim that Lenny was resisting. But the most damning evidence was yet to come. The defense team subpoenaed the 911 dispatch records for Officer Jensen. What they found was a disturbing pattern. This wasn't the first time Jensen had claimed a driver was resisting after a simple delay. The records showed multiple traffic stops, often involving black and elderly drivers, where non-aggressive delays were documented by Jensen as active resistance. A pattern of bias was laid bare for the court to see. It wasn't about what Lenny did. It was about how Officer Jensen perceived people who didn't move at the speed he demanded. The combination of this evidence was overwhelming. The medical truth, the body cam audio, and the officer's documented history of similar incidents completely destroyed his credibility. The jury saw the truth. This wasn't about a threat or a crime. It was about an officer's misinterpretation of a physical disability, amplified by his own pre-existing biases. So, what was the final outcome for the slow hand violation? Justice was served. All charges against Lenny Brooks were dropped, and even the expired tag ticket was dismissed. Officer Tyler Jensen was terminated from the police force for excessive use of force and for failing to follow department protocols for interacting with citizens with visible disabilities. He was later charged with misdemeanor battery for his assault on Lenny. Lenny also received a substantial civil settlement for his injuries and trauma. But the impact of his case went even further. In the wake of what became known as the Brooks incident, the police department was forced to implement mandatory recurring training for all officers on implicit bias and proper interaction with the disabled and the elderly. The training specifically uses this case as an example of how to not mistake a physical limitation for active resistance. Lenny Brooks's terrible experience became a catalyst for positive change, helping to ensure that what happened to him is less likely to happen to someone else. It's a powerful reminder that we must hold those in power accountable, and that sometimes the most important evidence isn't what's seen, but what's proven by science and data. Thank you so much for watching and for letting us share this important story with you. If you found this case as compelling as we did, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into cases that matter. We'll see you in the next video.